From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the N Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler alongside Kevin Sjuts in the 1011 Now streaming studio. Another edition of the N Report Husker Show brought to you by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Kevin, we thought we would be sitting here talking about how maybe Lexi Rodriguez and, Merritt Beeson led the Huskers to a national championship. Unfortunately, not the case. They ran into the buzzsaw that was the Penn State Nittany Lions, who today beat Louisville to win their first national championship since, I think,
2014.
2014, yeah.
It's been a decade. Nittany Lions take the title, a team that, and they finished a really good season. 34-2 overall. They are the national champions, 8th title in school history, and on their path to getting to the NCAA Final Bill, of course, they reverse swept Nebraska on Thursday night, a loss that a lot of Husker fans still talking about today. The sting is still fresh. Harper Murray, though, named to the Final Four all-tournament team. She's the lone Husker on the list.
Well, I'm surprised Andy Jackson's not on that list with the performance she had Thursday night. What do you make of looking back at that match, Kevin? Again, they were up 2-0, seemed to have all the momentum. Announcers were talking about, last time Nebraska got reverse swept in the NCAA tournament, I think was the early 1980s.
Well, sadly, you remember when the Patriots came back to beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. Was it 28-3?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody remembers specific numbers that define games or moments in sports. 22-16 is going to ring in a lot of Husker fans' heads for a long, long time, including John Cook, I'm sure. 22-16 was the score in set number 4. Nebraska had a 2-1 lead on Penn State, and in the fourth, the Huskers were 3 points away from advancing to the national championship. But they were unable to score those 3 points without Penn State coming all the way back and tying them. There were hitting errors in there. There's a Harper Murray attack where she stepped on the 10-foot line. Jess Mruzik had a number of kills for Penn State. Things got a little sideways for Nebraska in that stretch, and it seemed like the Huskers lost some confidence. They weren't swinging as aggressively as they had all match in that stretch. Andy Jackson didn't get the ball much. Nebraska ends up losing set 4. They go to set 5, and Nebraska plays from behind most of set 5, and they are eliminated from the tournament in a match that I think the reason it hurts for Husker fans, in my opinion, Bill, is because it was so much within their grasp. They were so close to advancing, and then the car just went off the road.
You never expected Penn State to necessarily go quietly by any means, but you got up 2-0. You dropped the third set, and and then in that fourth set, it was kind of back and forth. But then Harper Murray goes on, I think, 6-point run from behind the service line, and you think at that point you have the momentum, and just
through 3 sets, even though it was 2-1 in favor of Nebraska, Penn State had just taken the third. I think everybody still would say that Nebraska was the better team at that moment in time.
Oh yeah.
And when it was 21-16, you would say, or 22-16, you would say Nebraska's the better team. So for 3/4 of the match, Nebraska outplayed Penn State, who is the eventual national champions. Had Nebraska won in the semifinals against Penn State, I think most fans would feel really confident about the chances of winning a national championship. Because the way that the Huskers had played all season, because the run Nebraska went on in the NCAA tournament, because it's Lexi Rodriguez, the all-time digs leader at Nebraska, a milestone that she reached while at the Final Four. And Louisville played today without their best player. Anna DeBeer suffered an ankle injury in the semifinals. She did not go in the championship. Louisville's really good, don't get me wrong. Excellent coaching staff. Danny Busboom-Kelly, of course, is the head coach. But if you put Nebraska and Louisville side by side on Sunday with the national championship at stake, the Huskers would be the betting favorite.
Oh, yeah.
And Nebraska had swept the Cardinals earlier this season.
Yeah, and that match wasn't even really that close. And that was a top 5 matchup at the beginning of the season, and the Huskers dispatched of the Cardinals pretty easily.
So how do fans even react? Today's match was epic.
Ooh,
it was great.
Second set.
Second set went 34-32.
10 set points for Penn State.
And Louisville fought them off every single time. That was like edge of your seat sports drama. It was pretty electric. And it was a great match. There was such insanely high-level volleyball played at the KFC Yum Center in Louisville between Penn State and Louisville. You got to think if Nebraska made it to the final, they'd be hoisting championship trophy number 6.
And so this also puts a bow on Lexi Rodriguez's career with Nebraska, who I think we had the debate, or you had posed the question, who's the most sort of recognizable Husker volleyball player in recent history, and you were arguing that it's Lexi Rodriguez. But not only Lexi Rodriguez, Lindsay Krause, Kennedy Orr, Merritt Beeson, and we're missing one.
We are missing one. You're putting me on the spot here.
Oh, gosh. Lexi Rodriguez, Kennedy Orr, Merritt Beeson,
Lindsay Krause.
Layla Blackwell.
Thank you.
Was the 5th one there.
San Diego transfer.
Yes. So 4 of those 5 have signed now. They're going to play professional volleyball. I think Kennedy Orr is the only one, but putting a bow on sort of those seniors' career here at Nebraska, what do you make of that group?
Well, Lexi Rodriguez is on the Mount Rushmore of Nebraska volleyball, the all-time digs leader, and the 2 individuals she passed, who number 2 and number 3 were both Olympians. One's a current Olympian, Kayla Banworth, and Justine Wong-Arantes. She's now going to go play with Justine for the League One franchise in Omaha professionally. But Lexi Rodriguez, I think what I realized, and a lot of fans maybe reflected on after Nebraska was eliminated in Thursday's Final Four match, was that everybody used to think of volleyball players as 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". If you were tall, you played volleyball or basketball. But most volleyball players are tall.
Mm-hmm.
Lexi Rodriguez proved and inspired a generation of volleyball players that you don't have to just be tall to play volleyball. I mean, that's always been the case with liberos, serving specialists, defensive specialists, but the manner in which Lexi Rodriguez was on the highlights, the way in which she embraced the spotlight, the quote-unquote black shorts of Nebraska, the Legion of Boom or whatever they called them in the back row, she somehow, Lexi Rodriguez, led the movement that playing libero and being a back row player is cool. And now there's all these girls that want to be like Lexi Rodriguez. So it's not just about her impact at Nebraska. She has impacted a generation of young volleyball players. And this, oh, by the way, happens as the sport's growth just is skyrocketing. Even the national championship match had its highest attendance in the history of all the NCAA finals. And there have been television records that have been just shattered over the last couple of years. And the attendance record set at Memorial Stadium, who was on the court? It was Lexi Rodriguez. And if you go to a Nebraska volleyball match, anytime over the last 4 years, you see not just 1 or 2 Lexi Rodriguez shirts or jerseys. You see dozens of them. She is adored by this fan base. She is adored by so many young girls across the state of Nebraska. And she's all done it so humbly and with a huge smile on her face. She's been an ambassador for Nebraska, but also the sport of volleyball.
Yeah, she's going to be one that people don't forget for a long, long, long time. Merritt Beeson was someone who transferred coming in, and last year led him to the national championship. This year, you could tell maybe didn't play her best volleyball down the stretch, but she gets drafted number 1 in the PBF. She's someone who wasn't here as long as Lexi, but probably going to leave just as much of a mark as Lexi. Yeah,
Merritt Beeson just kind of threw herself into Nebraska's culture and a tremendous captain. She was co-captains with Lexi Rodriguez, and Merritt had some very honest comments following the semifinal match. You can see it at 1011now.com, just reflecting on her experience playing for John Cook, her experience of being embraced by this fan base, playing alongside Lexi Rodriguez. Merritt's just so insanely thankful that she picked Nebraska and thrived here. As you mentioned, number 1 pick in the PBF draft. She was selected by the Atlanta Vibe, and the Atlanta Vibe's head coach is Kayla Banworth. So she just can't escape Nebraska volleyball.
And so as you kind of turn the page and look ahead to next season, I believe it's already been announced that the ABCA First Serve is going to be hosted here in Lincoln. I would imagine that's probably going to be at Pinnacle Bank Arena.
Correct.
I think they maybe put out who was playing in it, maybe not. I think it might have been pulled back. Do we know who might be coming?
We don't. Some universities kind of leaked the schedule on their websites, but has since pulled them down. I don't know all 8, but it sounds like it's going to be an 8-team field, and the First Serve Showcase, I believe, is going to span a couple of days. It's going to be at Pinnacle Bank Arena. So John Cook wants some attendance records back with Nebraska's name on it, and that's how it's going to happen. And generally speaking, the First Serve Showcase, and it's not just for the past couple of years. This goes back decades since the inception of the event. It has elite teams. And you think back to how Nebraska started the season. They played Kentucky. And Louisville participated in that event. Wisconsin participates in that event. It's not just finding a few teams that want to come to Lincoln and play a few matches to start the season. No, this is going to be the first 4. It's like the Final Four, but in reverse. It's the beginning of the season, and it will likely include some of the teams that you can expect to compete for a national championship. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State is in Lincoln to begin the season. So the national champions' next match might happen at Pinnacle Bank Arena.
And so that was August 27th this year was when Nebraska played in that First Serve. So we would imagine probably a similar time frame next year. So late August is when you can look for.
It's the opening weekend.
High-level volleyball to return to Lincoln.
It may be the first Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the season. So that's going to be a fun way to kick off the year.
And so you lose your 5 seniors, but you've obviously John Cook's brought in another top class of recruits. Highlight, Carrie Leimbach, from Lincoln Lutheran, and it'll be interesting to see the battle for that libero position play out for next year with no more Lexi Rodriguez.
Lainey Choboy, Olivia Mauk, Carrie Leimbach joins the fold. Macy Bosiger's on the team. Yeah, that's going to be, and plus the roster size increases too. It goes from 14 to 18 next year. So Nebraska and all the other teams can carry a larger roster. Some of those position battles are going to be pretty interesting to watch unfold during training camp for Nebraska. I shouldn't just say training camp. It'll start in the spring. And as far as I know it, I think all of the 5 signees are going to join Nebraska for the spring semester. So they will get all those off-season winter conditioning in. They'll get the spring practices. They'll play beach together. This is a pretty elite recruiting class that Nebraska is bringing in and bringing on campus. I believe it ranked number 2 by PrepDig. T. Sigler is going to be one of the players that's probably going to be on the court. Campbell Flynn's another one. It's Nebraska volleyball. Of course they're bringing in studs.
So switching gears and moving over to football, it's again been been nice because football's still in the news. It's not the season's done. There's no bowl game, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We've still been able to hear from Coach Rule and players over the past several weeks while they've been having these bowl practices. Also, it's just been nuts with the coaching staff turnover alone, but then you add the roster turnover, people going into the portal, out of the portal, committing, and all sorts of different things. Where do we sit with football here?
How much time do we have? A lot has happened, as you indicated. This new coaching staff, they're now back to full strength. Every departure has been replaced. I think the final additions were announced on Friday, 3 new coaches, or Thursday, excuse me. Those coaches will all be on the field coaching this team at the Pinstripe Bowl. So you have some guys who just joined the staff, including their new wide receivers coach, DeKel Shorts. He is just learning these guys, but he's a Dana Holgerson disciple. But he's only spent a few weeks with this wide receiver room. He is going to be coaching that group at the Pinstripe Bowl. So when you hear the quotes and the comments of the bowl game isn't necessarily just the celebration of 2024, it's the start of 2025. There's no greater example than what's happened on the coaching staff. That there is John Butler as the defensive coordinator. Dana Holgerson is the full-time offensive coordinator. Terry Braden is now on staff. Phil Snow is going to be on the sidelines assisting Matt Rule and the defensive coaching staff. So they weren't really a part of 2024. And they're ready to start evaluating. And even the depth chart, which was released just Saturday, and you can see it at 1011now.com, there are some names that have not been on the depth chart all year. And some of those players that were elevated, it's because of position changes. It's because of departures. Isaiah Nair has opted out of the bowl game, so I believe he's going to go on the trip, but he will not play. But that allows Jalen Lloyd to be listed as the number one wide receiver for Nebraska on one side against Boston College. Jalen Lloyd has just 3 catches over the last 6 games. But we know he's good. Mm-hmm. He's shown flashes. Now he's going to get a great opportunity. And that's what this bowl game really represents for a lot of Nebraska's younger players, which they've been working so hard, and this coaching staff has raved about the scout team and the way that they have put in the work, and some of these younger players have been able to slowly earn playing time, earn respect of their peers, and caught the eye of their coaches. Quentin Ives, Dana Holgerson said he had 9 spectacular practices to start the bowl season.
Listed as the number 2.
Quentin Ives, I don't know if he has more than 3 carries all season.
I don't think so.
He's going to get on the field in the Pinstripe Bowl.
What do you make? So with the addition of the new coaches, Addison Williams from UCF, Phil Snow, again, former coach with Matt Rule, you now have 3 coaches with John Butler that have been defensive coordinators. So it's almost like you have multiple guys there on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and how do you split up the responsibility? They made it work on the offensive side of the ball because remember, this year, up until Dana Holgerson's arrival, there were co-offensive coordinators at Nebraska. It was Glenn Thomas and Marcus Satterfield. Though Satterfield was the Huskers' play caller. They shared the OC title. So under the Matt Rule umbrella, there was some structure to that, and it wasn't a free-for-all. I believe that this is going to be the similar case on the defensive side. Not to mention, I go back to that comment Matt Rule made some point during the season when Nebraska was chasing bowl eligibility. Like, I want people to feel what I'm feeling. There was some, I don't know if discontent is the right word. There was some pressure I think he was feeling. And there was some unsettledness of, where the program was and what it was going to take to break through. And so there has been action behind that. And some of the action was getting some new coaches on staff and getting some coaches that have been in a head coach's seat or a defensive coordinator's seat. And you look at the staff right now as it stands heading into the Pinstripe Bowl. I don't know the number, Bill, but the average age of the staff, it has ticked up. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not an end-all, be-all, but it does indicate that Matt Rule has more veteran voices to lean on and to help him guide this team into 2025.
Some of the, additions to the roster now, again, with this whole transfer portal era, probably one of the big one is Williams Nwaneri, I think is how you say it. Nwaneri. Big defensive edge player, transferred from Missouri. He's from the Kansas City area. I believe he was rated as like the number 1 edge rusher coming out of high school last year.
His star rating was actually higher than Dylan Raiola's. They were in the same recruiting class.
Ooh.
He's a 5-star just like Dylan. But if you do the composite or, all the recruiting services, how they have like a formula, he actually graded higher than Dylan Raiola.
Impressive.
But he did not play this year at Missouri. He's got, essentially a redshirt year. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska has him for 4 years.
And then the other note that came out from football is they announced that their game against Cincinnati to open the 2025 season, that's moving to Arrowhead Stadium down in Kansas City.
Yeah, getting back to the transfer situation, they have added a wide receiver from Cal that had a handful of touchdowns this year. Nizea, I believe is his name.
Hunter.
Nizea Hunter, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a nice piece because Nebraska is going to lose Jamal Banks. They're going to lose Isaiah Nayer, both of those guys to graduation. Malachi Coleman has transferred. Alex Bullock is graduating. So Ja'Cory Barney's going to be back, but they're going to need some complementary pieces on the edge. And so Nizea Hunter has joined Nebraska, and then the Huskers are in the Dane Key sweepstakes. He's a very talented wide receiver who's leaving Kentucky. He played for DeKel Shorts. DeKel's trying to get him to come to Lincoln, but I know he's got a lot of perennial powers that are going after him as well.
Yep, a lot of money getting thrown around to a lot of different players. A player like Dante Dowdell. He kind of surprisingly transferred out. I think he announced he's committed now to Kentucky. And I think Matt Rule even talked about, on Friday when he met with the media, these players aren't just jumping in the portal to jump in and see what the offer is. They have the offer in hand before they go into the portal.
It makes you wonder, when are these offers happening?
It just makes you it's not college football like it was just a couple years ago.
This is not your grandfather's college football.
It feels a little icky sometimes.
Right.
So, but going back to moving the game down to Kansas City, I believe you looked it up. I think it's third time the Huskers will play down in Arrowhead Stadium.
That's correct. They played in, I believe, the 1980s, and then, of course, they played in the Big 12 championship game in 2006 under Bill Callahan, a game that Nebraska lost to Oklahoma. So this will be number 3. And not only did Nebraska move the Cincinnati game to Arrowhead Stadium, I shouldn't say Nebraska moved it. Cincinnati's actually the host. They are moving it with the agreement of Nebraska. It's definitely going to benefit the Huskers. Originally, the game was scheduled for Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Then they moved it to Indianapolis and Lucas Oil Stadium. They've moved it from Lucas Oil Stadium to Arrowhead Stadium. Why? Money.
You fill up that stadium a lot easier than you can Lucas Oil.
In Cincinnati, you know that they would love to have the additional income, even if it is a, I think the gap between Lucas Oil and Arrowhead is like 12,000 fans.
Yeah.
But also some of the other sales and everything else that helps line the pockets of an athletic department. Cincinnati's going to welcome that income. And but yeah, the game goes down to Arrowhead Stadium, and then it also moves up to Thursday. That's Labor Day weekend. So Nebraska fans looking to plan an extended weekend are going to have a little more flexibility because the game is on Thursday.
My wife already bought us tickets. I was excited about that. She said
I heard that the website had some issues when the tickets first went on sale.
She never said she had any issues, but she sent me a screenshot of and it had the seat information, and it said home team side. And I said, babe, we're not the home team, right? She goes, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, oh, so we might be around some Cincinnati fans. We'll have to see.
No, you won't.
There's a chance. Might be small, but there's
sure.
a chance. So, okay. So, again, Pinstripe Bowl coming up less than a week away now. You're heading to New York City starting Thursday. Is that what I...
Correct.
Is that what I... Okay. And so we'll have some coverage once you get there, and then obviously the day of, so you have to make sure you tune in for that. Again, 11 o'clock our time kickoff, I believe.
On ABC.
On ABC.
Mike Monaco is going to be on the play-by-play with Kirk Morrison joining him in the booth. Games at Yankee Stadium. That's going to be really, really neat.
Have you ever been to Yankee Stadium?
Never have.
All right. That'll be fun. That'll be fun for you. Really quickly, basketball. Nebraska women had a big match against Georgia Tech today. Fortunately, they dropped that matchup, but again, still ranked in the top 25. What do you make of Amy Williams and her squad so far this season?
They're pretty good. 10-2. Their 2 losses are to Creighton and Georgia Tech. They've taken care of the business they need to take care of. The 2 losses are against pretty strong opponents. But let's see what happens when the Big Ten season gets cooking. They play on New Year's Day, Bill. I don't know if you're looking ahead at the women's basketball schedule.
They're making their West Coast trip.
Yeah, they got USC on New Year's Day.
They'll be at UCLA on the 29th and then at USC on New Year's Day.
So the new additions to the Big Ten. Somebody had to be the team to take them on, and unfortunately it's Amy Williams' team. So, and
the Husker men really taking part in their West Coast trip. They're in Hawaii right now for the
Mele Kalikimaka.
Yeah, for the Diamond Head Classic. They're taking on Murray State here in about 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes. They're going to play 3 games down there. What do you make of the men so far? Again, they had a big win. Again, they obviously dropped that game against Michigan State. It wasn't great, but came back in big win against Indiana.
Yeah, this is a very winnable tournament. And Fred Hoiberg says winning the first one is very important. He has a lot of respect for Murray State. It's a team that moves at a pretty rapid rate.
No John Morant on this team, though.
No John Morant. And Fred said the challenge with some of these tournaments, you see them more around Thanksgiving. There's a lot of extracurriculars. In a way, it's like a bowl trip, but for basketball.
Yeah.
Nebraska didn't take any trip around Thanksgiving. They played a home game against a non-conference opponent. And now they're off in Honolulu at the Diamond Head Classic. If you look at the teams that are there, Nebraska could very well win this tournament. But there's a lot of other things that happen when you're in Honolulu. There's a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
Look what happened out in Maui with UConn, the defending 2-time national champion.
Dropped all 3 games.
They were a wreck.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're a bad team, but just sometimes when you get isolated from your routine and your environment and schedules are so different and even the place you're playing. Fred Hoiberg even said in Hawaii they're using a different basketball that they were practicing with in the days leading up to going out there. So they're all to say that there's a lot of variables, and it may not just be the best team wins the tournament. But if it were to come shake out with the best team winning the tournament, Nebraska has a chance.
All right. Two other real quick things I wanted to ask you about. One, you're a Heisman voter. Obviously, Travis Hunter won the Heisman this year. How'd you fill out your ballot? What'd you think of? I think you had Hunter and Genty right up there.
I had Ashton Genty number 1. I had Travis Hunter number 2. Dylan Gabriel number 3. Oregon quarterback number 3.
There you go.
And they said it was the closest vote between 1 and 2 in a long time. In the fan vote, or the public vote,
went to Genty.
Went to Genty.
So that was an interesting.
That's how I did my Heisman vote.
Nice. And then,
you don't need me to elaborate on why I put Genty over Hunter. I just think he's really good.
Yeah.
And I think Hunter's really good too.
Yeah.
But Genty's yards after contact, that's what. That dude's a dog.
And just like missed tackles,
yeah. And he's got amazing speed.
Yeah. That'll be, which leads into my next question. Did you get a chance to watch the first round of the college football playoff? What'd you make of those matchups and those games?
Absolutely. I don't like all the complaining about the first round lopsided scores. That's the big narrative is, there was finally a playoff. They expanded, 12 teams, schools hosting, and none of the games were really competitive or close. Mm-hmm. The closest one was Texas defeating Clemson by 2 touchdowns. So everybody was crying to expand the playoff. We got more football. We got schools hosting playoff games, and we're complaining about it? That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
It's not too much of a hot take, but my goodness. I know the games weren't great games, but you'll never hear me complain about more football. And plus, the expansion of the playoff created tremendous intrigue and week-to-week evaluation of everything that was happening in college football. Mm-hmm. Let's not lose sight of that. That there were conversations about who would maybe be a playoff team and who wouldn't in that quote-unquote bubble in week 6, week 7, week 8. It was good for the game.
Even earlier than that. I think someone from The Athletic had Nebraska as like a 11 or 12 seed, I think, after they beat Colorado earlier in the year.
Right. So there was a lot of benefit to expanding the playoffs. I'm curious to see what happens. Do they go to 16? Do they keep it at 12? And for anybody that thought that it would be a perfect product in the first year of going to 12, you maybe lost sight of reality.
Yeah. Because
no time you ever take on a new endeavor do you have it right at the very beginning.
No.
And I think that's maybe what the committee was thinking, and all the executives of the college football playoff that they did recognize that their expansion needed to happen. They went with 12, and they reserved the right to make some adjustments.
Well, you look at the first round of the NCAA basketball tournament. There's some lopsided scores there too.
Right.
There's some upsets, but
there was no 5-12 though. There was no Cinderella, but there's never going to be a Cinderella because that's not how this playoff is designed. It's designed right now for the 12 best teams, well, assuming that all the conference champions are among the 12 best teams, to get into the playoff.
Yeah, some more football. I liked it. I was kind of hoping I'd see more snow there in Notre Dame Stadium, though.
Yeah, well.
Beggars can't be choosers.
And if you look at the quarterfinal matchups for next week, and these are going to be outstanding football games.
Lots to look forward to. Like you said, it's more football. It's hard to complain about more football, especially more college football.
Ohio State, Oregon, round 2.
Yeah.
Ohio State's favored, by the way.
Are they really?
At the Rose Bowl, yeah. 1.5. Even though they've lost to Oregon. And Oregon's undefeated.
Ooh, that'll be another good matchup. All right, Kevin, appreciate your time as always. Again, insight is always valued. So again, make sure you keep up with him. Again, starting after Christmas, he's going to be in New York City, having all the coverage of Nebraska's Pinstripe Bowl trip. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, watching another edition of the N Report Husker Show, brought to you by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Until next time, hope everyone has a nice day. Hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.
You've been listening to the N Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the N Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m.